Hi, Michael Solis from Vantage Point Counseling, and thank you for watching this today. I just wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about sex addiction and a common controversial question that we get. And that question is whether or not sex addiction is something that's real. That becomes a pretty complicated question because it's a pretty controversial topic. As a certified sex addiction therapist, I obviously do work with people who I really do see who are struggling with compulsive sexual behavior. And this can include an complete isolation from their families, and watching pornography, and an inability to control that enough so that they're able to connect in a way that's really meaningful with their families. Or it can be compulsive chatting and sexual talk outside of the relationship, their primary relationship. Or it could be, compulsive cheating, massages. There's a lot of different kinds of behavior that this can include. What this typically is it's typically starts out as numbing behavior from a person who's really not dealing well with whether it's anxiety or depression, maybe some trauma, and this becomes so out of control that that person uses it so regularly for sort of disconnecting from those day-to-day issues that are in their lives. Um, when people argue against sex addiction, a lot of times they're not actually talking about the same thing that sex addiction therapists are treating. And so they are talking about therapists, and there are therapists out there who will say that they're sex addiction therapists, but they actually are reparative therapists who are kind of in disguise and use and treating, and I put that in quotes, treating sexual orientation as an illness. And so, and they'll also call it an addiction a lot of times. That is not a group that is under the class of certified sex addiction therapists. There's a specific credential for that, and the organization called ITAP, who is in charge of that credential, has a stance against reparative therapy, which says that that this is an unethical practice, which it is. So there's also controversy about when people are dealing with something like a pornography addiction, whether they're actually dealing with an addiction or they're just feeling a lot of shame and they're trying to make excuses so that they don't lose connection in their relationships. And there's a certain argument for that. And I know that I worked with people who've come in and felt like they were a porn addict, and after we started doing some work, they really weren't addicted. They just were dealing with a lot of shame surrounding their own use. And what people there typically need is somebody to kind of walk with them through what's sexuality, or what's healthy sexuality going to look like for them in their own lives. So that's some work that we do as well. Another common question that we get is, how do we determine whether or not somebody's dealing with an actual sexual addiction versus dealing with a question about their own sexuality, or dealing with shame around their sexuality, and or just has cheated a few times, which is not necessarily a sexual addiction. And what we do, we're trained in specific tools that are used to help people determine whether or not what they're actually dealing with is an actual compulsive issue, or if it's something that just the couple needs to work on together to become more connected in a way, or if there's just some underlying other sexual issue that the couple needs to be looking at or discussing, or opening lines of communication about. That's a big part of our work as well. If you're watching this, this is a pretty complex issue, so I want you to feel free to be able to reach out to us and ask us any questions that you might have. We are more than willing to answer them. You'll hear a lot of opinions about sexual addiction. It is a controversial topic, and it is something that people deal with, and it's a real issue. So if you're not sure, reach out to us, send us an email. give us a call and we can kind of help to guide you on what the next steps would be and whether or not it's an actual problem in your life. And maybe if it's not a problem, maybe there's something else we can help with.